Don't you just want to open yourself up with a knife and take out that part of you that you hate and loathe, the part of you that gets angry, that blows up, that takes half a second to reach from 0 to 60, and then you can't control it and you feel bad? Because that was what was done to you as a child, and now you're doing it yourself. That's the most common complaint I hear from my clients, that they don't want to be like their parents. They don't want to do what people did to them because they know exactly how bad it feels, but they just can't control it. It comes out of nowhere. They don't know what to do. They've tried everything. So when you want to be able to control your explosive anger because you're breaking things, you're terrified of being violent to your very special loved ones, you don't want your nearest and dearest, especially your children, to see you that way. You don't want to frighten people. You don't want to frighten yourself. You don't want to lose your job. You don't want to mess up your relationships. Then it becomes a situation where you're panicking, and the anger no longer becomes the issue. It's the panicking about the anger that now becomes something you need to control. So here's what I suggest. We look at one client I have had in the past and show you how I tried to help him and the pitfalls that got in the way. So my client was in his mid-30s. He was married twice, and he was on the verge of losing his second wife. He had 2 children by his first marriage, and he had another 2 children from his second marriage. He didn't see his first 2 children very often because his ex-wife didn't want contact because he was always explosive, and she was terrified that he might be violent or show them ways of behaving that she didn't approve of. And now his second wife was beginning to feel the same thing. There were always rows. He was drinking. He was taking drugs. He was working all the time to try any distraction to stop the panic that he might get explosive again, that he might start breaking things again, that he might be self-destructive, that he might get in the car and actually drive into some kind of oblivion. There were times when he thought the only thing he could do was to totally destroy himself, and then his loved ones would be okay. So this is how I helped him, and this is how you can help yourself as well. When your anger comes from a place where you were hurt as a child, and it doesn't have to be physical hurt, it's usually emotional hurt. It could be that you felt betrayed. It could be that your parents weren't communicating properly with you, that you felt unseen, unheard, unacknowledged, that you were scared in some way, that if you dared to open your mouth, you would be banished. You weren't allowed to have an opinion. You weren't allowed to have a feeling. You kind of became a machine. Well, imagine how angry that would make you. Just imagine how many years and years and years and layers and layers and layers of anger and resentment and fear that you built up. So now that you're an adult and you have adult relationships, that anger has to go somewhere. You've tried numbing it with alcohol, you've tried numbing it with drugs or sex or whatever other thing, work, TV, games, anything at all. And they just work for little bits of time, and then it doesn't work anymore. Maybe you've even tried pills, and that doesn't work anymore. Anything just works for a short time. Perhaps you've tried eating and eating and eating to numb yourself, and that doesn't work anymore. So you're really scared and panicking, and you really don't know the difference anymore between anger and panic. And in a way, they're kind of related, because the anger comes initially from panicking that you're going to lose all your relationships as a child if you dare to be yourself, if you dare to stick up for yourself, if you dare to protect yourself, and if you dare to try and speak your truth and have a genuine connection. So part of the work we need to do is to excuse me, deal with the trauma of the childhood. So when my client came to me, he didn't want to talk about it. He just wanted tools that would help him control the anger when he felt that rising up inside him, when he could kind of feel the throbbing in his head, the sweating of his palms, that shaking inside him, that gritting of the teeth, that adrenaline rushing around, that kind of made him unsteady. And he knew he was going to blow. He just wanted tools to control it. And yes, there are tools, but the tools involve getting in touch with the original trauma so that you can lessen it, change it, so that the reason for your explosions will kind of dissipate. Wouldn't you like that too? Wouldn't you like to take away the cause of your anger rather than keep on trying to manage it? Because if you don't, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and more difficult to manage, which is what my client was faced with when he came to me, having tried everything else, including meditation, retreats, and so on. Because all those things are trying to stuff the anger, just like he did when he was young. And he had to do it then in order to survive. Because if he didn't, he wouldn't have a family. He'd have kind of orphaned himself. So now as an adult, it's all coming out, but he doesn't quite know how to express it. So here's what I suggested as step number 1. When something triggers his anger, he should actually write it down and then think about the same anger that he might have felt earlier in his life with other people, in his adult life, and also when he was an adolescent and a child, and draw some connections, draw a kind of family tree of where this angry feeling is coming from. Is it coming when you feel you've been unfairly criticized, that expectations are unreasonable, that you feel like you're being gagged? Where is it coming from? Draw the family tree. I can't tell you how freeing and liberating it is, because you're seeing where it's coming from. You're actually getting it out on the table. You're much more able to see it, understand it, and then control it. You can't control something you can't see, that you don't know where it's coming from, and you don't know when it's going to hit you next. Then you're constantly on alert, and you can't have normal relationships. So that was step number 1. Step number 2, having written it down, is to then at a later moment when you're not feeling so angry, is to communicate that feeling to whoever it was you were angry with in that moment, whether it's your wife, your child, your brother, a colleague, a boss, a friend, whoever it might be. But say to them, I was feeling really angry at the time we had this row. I'm not angry anymore, but would you be willing to listen to how I felt then? And I will also want to know how you felt. That's the secret. You have to be able to do it both ways. You have to give them space to listen to you when you're not angry by just reading it out. And then you have to be open to listening to them. And when you have that kind of exchange, it changes the old connections that trigger these explosions. It rewires your brain into a new reality so that you don't have to keep reliving the explosive anger from the past. And slowly, you integrate the past into the present instead of continually trying to push it away, deny it, ignore it, pretend it's not there, whip it into shape, and all those things. Because you've already tried all those things for years and they haven't worked. Otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. So why not give those things a try? And in the first place now, write for me some comments about how you feel. Are you angry right now hearing me telling you this? Do you feel I'm not hearing you? Because that's a good trigger. You can explore that. Do you feel this is worth trying? Have you tried it before? What are your experiences of trying to control your anger? What have you found that works in the long term so that you don't have to feel so bad about yourself? That's how you can manage those explosions and feel good about yourself. Get rid of all the bad stuff that's making you angry. Have some room for good stuff. Listen to your friends and everybody else. While you're telling them, they tell you. And then gradually the bad stuff inside you changes to something good, something acceptable, something tolerable. You won't feel so horrible about yourself. When you start loving yourself, other people will too. And then there won't be any need for explosive anger.